Hey guys, welcome back to the lounge. Bobby D here. Leftist lunatic rhino Dan Crenshaw out of Texas said that if he met Tucker Carlson, he would effing kill him. And I guess Traitor Dan doesn't like being exposed, because that's exactly what Tucker Carlson has been doing. He has been exposing him. And here's a few clips of him taking a flamethrower to Traitor Dan, because he's nothing but a warhawk neocon that doesn't give a shit about America, his constituents, or any of the citizens of America, but only about lining his pocketbook and helping out foreigners over his own people. Check this out.
Next time Dan Crenshaw stands up and says, "But you don't understand the threat," shut up, Dan Crenshaw. And everyone liked Dan Crenshaw. Just about had it with you. You got hundreds of thousands of American citizens dying of drug ODs, and you've done nothing. Your state was invaded by foreign nations at the behest of international organizations, including the United Nations. 15 million young men just came into our country for reasons we can't even understand, and you did nothing over your border. And you're going to tell me that some other nation is the threat? No, you're the threat. And that's true. So I don't care what party that person comes from. That person is an enemy of everything that you voted for. Trust me. We've seen this movie so many times, and the way that they short-circuit your critical thinking and get you to go along with it, and I know because I've been a victim of this, is by scaring the crap out of you with something. You are the father who abandoned his children, and there's no excuse for that. You, Dan Crenshaw, you entire Democratic Party, you Mitch freaking McConnell, you're the one whose own children languished and died while you focused on the neighbor's kids or kids in another country. All of that may be fine, but your duty is to your kids. That's why you're the leader. And anyone who shirks that duty is guilty of abandonment, and there is no lower man than the man who abandons his family. There is no lower form of leader than the leader who doesn't care about the people in his charge. And so make that the litmus test, I would say. I mean it, and I don't care what they say.
Texas does seem, I'm just being totally honest, the single most left-wing, truly left-wing member of Congress I've ever met personally is a Republican from this area who has no interest in the United States whatsoever and does not even pretend. I'm not going to name names. Oh, I think that's right. Yeah, it's Dan Crenshaw, the most liberal, most left-wing person I've ever met in the Congress. I'm just being serious. I mean, structurally, how does that happen?
Well, it happens because we don't go beyond this is not going to apply to the people in the room because you're the hyper-informed. You don't understand how much more informed you are than your neighbor that you didn't invite tonight. I really mean that. Your brother, your mom. Yes, they're Republican. They're voting Republican. They probably have a MAGA hat on. Go Trump! Ask them. Ask them when the last time they voted in a school board election was. Ask them if they even voted in a primary election. We don't do it because we're in a safe, comfortable place. And this happens everywhere. It happens in Wyoming. It's like the reddest state in the union. It's not unique to Texas. If you're a scumbag communist and you want to get elected in a place like Wyoming, you can't run as a Democrat. You can't run as a hard lefty. You throw on some cowboy boots and you buy a shotgun and go out there and take a picture shooting at some pheasants, and you learn how to speak the lingo a little bit, watch a little bit of Tucker Carlson. Now you know what to say, how to deceive exactly, and you find yourself in a position of power kneecapping people on the right time after time after time. Our controlled opposition problem is so bad, and that's why we always feel like we're playing tug-of-war with Whoopi Goldberg. It just doesn't feel like you can win.
They're framing what's very obviously censorship as an act of self-defense against a foreign adversary. And if that sounds familiar, it should be. It's the same rationale they used to spy on Donald Trump, among other things, once they designated him a tool of Russia. And as always, they're doing all of this in the bluntest, least restrained terms, because it's your fault, actually. Quote, "Voting against the bill is a vote for the Chinese Communist Party," proclaimed neocon Congressman Dan Crenshaw, the Nikki Haley of Texas. Quote, "The opponents of this bill aren't defending free speech, They're defending Chinese access to American data and American minds. Not a good look. You're a bad American if you don't agree with me, says Dan Crenshaw. And the rest of the liars said similar things. And maybe some of them believed it. That is possible, given the median IQ in the Congress. Then on questions of foreign policy, you would not spend a ton of time worrying about Taiwan. It's far away, and honestly, who cares? No. Because you don't have all the money in the world or all the time in the world, you would narrow down your priorities, and you would spend your energy and military might on your own hemisphere, where you and your population actually live. The people you want to protect, they live in the Western Hemisphere. So you would not allow the Chinese government to colonize pretty much every country in the Americas, including Canada and Mexico. No. And you certainly wouldn't let the Chinese, of all people, build the infrastructure in places that you directly control, like the supposedly American Virgin Islands, where the roads are paid for by China. That would be crazy and humiliating and very easy to stop. You wouldn't have to put up with that, so you wouldn't put up with it, not for a second. And just to make sure that China understood you're doing all you could to protect your own people, because that was really your goal, because being Dan Crenshaw, you really care about your own people and your own country. Because of that, you would immediately shoot down any spy balloon from China that floated over Montana. Obviously, that's some of what you would do. And yet, somehow, the U.S. government, even Dan Crenshaw, who really cares about your children, protecting them from China, has done none of that and has no plans to do any of that ever. So China still makes our antibiotics and our vitamins. But what Dan Crenshaw is doing is banning a social media app. And probably not the first social media app Dan Crenshaw will call for banning, or the Biden administration, with the help of Republican leaders, will try to ban. How do those people, as they inevitably do, seize the moral high ground in the opening moments of the ideological battle and position themselves as like the champions of freedom and human rights when in fact they're monsters? Like how do they get away with that every single time?
I think it's a direct result of the all-volunteer force, which seems a good idea. I'm still supportive of it, but it means it's a very, the people that actually serve, that bear the cost of these overseas efforts, is maybe 0.5% of the population serving. 3 or 4% know that 1%. And then 95% of America has no clue and no skin in the game, and so they're easily bullshitted by the posturing jackasses in Washington.
That's why Dan Crenshaw has a job.
Why is it that Republican states tend to have the least sincere Republican? Like Dan Crenshaw, apparently still a member of Congress from the state of Texas, who is zero interest in the U.S.
Patch
border.
McCain.
All his interest is in the Ukrainian border, the Gaza border. You know, how does a guy like that get elected in a supposedly Republican state?
Well, complacency and life being good makes us soft, right? It's just the fact of life. It's one of those things humanity struggled with. As soon as you get rich or well off or comfortable, how do you keep improving? How do you keep your edge? You rarely do. This is what's happened to red state Republicans. There's nobody more at fault for the condition of this country than red state GOP voters. And people get mad when I say that, but let me just go down the list here. Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn, John Thune, Tillis. I mean, look, you can go down the list. Every dork from Louisiana. The reddest states in this country give us the most putrid Republicans at the federal level. Why does that happen? Because the GOP primary voter in red states lives in a relatively normal place. He lives in comfort. He thinks he's got a red legislature, so he either doesn't vote in primaries, that's mostly the case, he's just going to sit at home, or even worse, he goes to vote for Senator Dork, who he sees on Fox News every time. Well, Lindsey Graham was on Fox tonight. I guess he's on my side. You should have nothing but disdain for virtually every single senator you see on Fox News, and yet people vote for who they see on television. Well, I met John Thune once, and he was so handsome. He's very clearly on our side. John Thune supported gun control legislation, and John Thune on camera was asked to back up American people owning AR-15s, and the best argument he could make for your liberty, for the Second Amendment, was that, I kid you not, this is on camera, he told people, well, I mean, a lot of people use them to shoot prairie dogs. These are the weapons-grade losers who control the GOP, and they're from the reddest states. Susan Collins is understandable, Tucker. Sorry to get all fired up. It's understandable. She's from Maine. It's from a blue state. Of course we're going to get some wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed dork from that kind of state. For the Dakotas? The Dakotas are so red, it's crazy. They could have somebody to the right of me if they wanted to, but they don't. Well, I saw him on Fox last night. Oh, just gag me with a fork.
Demand that your elected leaders who are using your money and have your authority and your military, that they do something about it. Your neighborhood looks nothing like it did 10 years ago because of illegal immigration. Well, we have a military on which we spend like $1.5 trillion a year. Why aren't they at the border protecting the country they serve? What is that? I don't understand. And anyone else who doesn't get that immediately is not qualified to represent you. And I actually think it rarely takes a primary. I think if enough people sit down with Congressman X, even someone like Dan Crenshaw or Lindsey Graham, yeah, boo. But I think if you actually sat down with Dan Crenshaw and said, listen, Dan, I get it. You're a little, but I'm kind of on to you now. And we want you to do the following 10 things. And if you don't, we're going to get someone who's aligned with us, and we're going to primary you. And at the very least, we're going to wreck your day. And he'll maybe be like, okay, your concerns are more important than the concerns of my donors. I will actually do what you want. Because in the end, it's not personal. You just want someone to listen to you and help you. That's the whole point of our system. Your representatives are there to help you. And if they're not, then you have to replace them. You have to be serious about it. And they will listen to you. If you are serious, they will listen. And by serious, I don't mean threatening them or jumping up and down. But just call Charlie Kirk, man. There's no one better at that. Hey, Charlie Kirk, I'm calling, I'm a Turning Point Action donor, and I think we should primary so-and-so. Call Charlie Kirk. Probably, yeah, Lindsey Graham, someone should just do that. Not because, I kind of like Lindsey Graham personally, but it is such an insult to the idea of an opposition party. You have two parties. They should not agree with each other on the biggest questions. Because if they do, someone's getting left out of the equation, and that person is you. Someone needs to represent you on the big issues, the things that actually matter. Not just on swimmers at some state college, but on real issues. And anyway, just make them obey. I think that's up to us. Don't be charmed by them. Force them.
One of the biggest problems we have, we had a gubernatorial election out here, and 18% of the people turned out to vote. We had a staunch Republican who was really for American rights, and then we had a rhino in Asa Hutchinson. Everybody knew Asa's name. They didn't pay attention that he was in the Chinese pockets. He's in the pockets of Tyson's, Walmart. Chinese Communist Party officials were at the governor's mansion multiple times when Asa was the governor, and we had somebody that should have beat him, but she lost in the primaries because only 18% of the people showed up. So we've got to show up for the primaries. We've got to show up for the school boards, our judges, prosecutors, everything. But these primaries, they are extremely important in our gubernatorial races, voting down ballot. I mean, that's a word. That's know who the candidate is, and know what their positions are. See if they align with your values. See if they align with our values, the values of America. Because I can tell you right now, I know people that have said I voted straight down ticket when we had some really, really horrible Republicans that they were not on our side. They voted name recognition in the primaries, and so we were stuck with crappy Republicans and even crappier Democrats. You're voting on the lesser of two evils. So in these primaries, find out the positions of these people, and let's start voting in better people. But for Dan Crenshaw to say, "I'll effing kill Tucker," it just goes to show that Tucker's getting under his skin because Tucker's exposing him for exactly what he is, and hopefully he is primaried. Hopefully they toss his ass out on the street because he is anything but pro-America. Anyway, Bobby D here at the lounge. Thanks for joining me.